Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's forum. We're going to be talking about unusual pests. I'm Natalie Bungay, and I'm going to be your host today, keeping you all under control and making sure everything is running smoothly. So, yeah, thank you for being with us today. I can see there's lots of people still joining. Got 112 participants with us at the moment, but just while I'm doing some introductions, hopefully we'll get a few more. Also, it's a good chance at this introduction phase is to check that everybody's sound, audio, and visual aspect is working okay. Hopefully, from my end, had the dreaded internet issues this week, so yeah, definitely need some feedback for everybody on whether you can hear me and see me okay. I think we can. So, but yes, welcome. Getting a few comments, and I was going to mention myself as well. What a glorious morning it is, where I am in Yorkshire. I can see there's lots of people joining from all over. We've got Dublin and Gibraltar, I think. Yeah, Gibraltar, south of the country, north of the country, Dublin. So yeah, great to have you all here. Hope you're all getting busy. And again, really appreciate that it is getting busy now. So everyone that joining us today is just a really good indication to your commitment to learning new things, because you might be thinking unusual pests. Why are we talking about unusual pests? Really, I say, why not? It's good to have a different approach to these forums and get some different subjects, get different things to talk about. So yeah, I'll go through that agenda in just a moment. Before I do, just a little bit of housekeeping. So as a lot of you have seen already, we've got a chat section where you can do as you're doing now. Just let us know where you are, where you're coming in from. But also, like I mentioned before, if you do have any technical issues or you can't hear me or something goes wrong, then put it in the chat section. And my colleague Beth and Lauren are just sort of sat in the background, and they will try and give you some good pointers on what you can do to sort that out. Generally is going to be turn it off and turn it on most of the time. Yeah, but we'll obviously get you joined back up again. So let us know any issues. We also have a Q&A section. So as usual, at the end of every presentation this morning, we'll have an opportunity to ask the presenter some questions. I'll pop back up and you can, as I said, whether it's at the beginning of the presentation or at the end of it or during it, if you think of a question, get those in there, because it really gets that conversation going. And we always try and cover everything that we think you would want to know about a particular subject, but your questions help us to get everything covered for you. So Q&A section for questions to the presenter. If you do put a question in the chat section that you want me or the presenter to see, there's a possibility that's not going to happen. So just make sure you get it in the Q&A. Like I said, I've got my colleagues in the background that will try and keep an eye on that. And if you do accidentally post it in the wrong place, we'll try and encourage you to put it in the right place. And I'll keep an eye on it as much as I can. If we get lots and lots of questions, we don't manage to get to it at the end of the presentation, then as usual, we'll try and get those answered live in a text fashion in the chat section rather than live on the screen, just so we can get the other presenters on. But we will always try and get those done for you. Okay. So that's Q&A chat. CPD points. So we've got 3 CPD points for today. Everybody here that's registered is going to be automatically uploaded onto your CPD account, be it Basis Prompt or BPCA registered, if you're the person that's registered. However, if you've got a lot of people maybe sitting around one laptop and you haven't all registered specifically for this, then just make sure once the forum is finished, you log on to your CPD scheme and get those points uploaded yourself. And also, sometimes you might want to watch one of these presentations another time or later on, or share it with one of your colleagues. As you can see on our channel, you can watch all of these presentations back on our channel. So just again, make sure you get your CPD points uploaded, and it's 3 for today. Just a quick shout out before I go through the agenda. So we've got a charity that BPCA supports called the Trussell Trust. I always struggle saying that. Trussell Trust. There we go. It's a food bank. So BPCA, we try and do all sorts of events. We done a bake sale the other week. Everybody apart from me, I'm not very good at baking. Baked some cakes, and we sold them to the people in the local area, and we raised quite a few £100s. It was about 300 and something pounds. So you'll be redirected to that website during this forum, after this forum. So if any of you got a few pennies to spare, then please, we would love you to donate. And also, just out of interest, in the chat section, if you have any ideas of things we can do to raise money, as long as it's not throwing me out of anything or making me do something that would make me look silly. But then I like looking silly. So but any ideas you have, it'd be great. It would be great to hear what you think. And then last thing, so feedback as well. We want feedback on this event. So obviously, the presenters and the content to the presentations they're given, the subjects that they're delivering. But also just let us know if there's anything that you think, you know what, it would be really good if BPCA done a forum or a webinar on X subject, because we're always trying to make sure we're delivering you the things that you want to hear about. And yeah, we could do with your help with that. Okay, great. I'm just going to go through the agenda really quickly before we get started with our first presenter. So shout out to Pest today. They are our sponsors. We can't run these events without our colleagues there helping us, and Elaine from Pest will be talking to us later on, titled "A Foul Discussion from an Unusual Bird." So we'll see what Elaine has to say about those unusual bird. But just for Lorraine, we'll first have Richard Faulkner up from Envu talking about unusual pests. You might be thinking, Natalie, that doesn't give me any information. Well, I think that's quite exciting, isn't it? We can see what they have to say. But I think Richard's going to be explaining a little bit about what is a unusual pest. So Richard will be coming up first in a moment, followed by Elaine, said from Pest Fix. We'll have a break at 10:55, just for 10 minutes. So you can go and grab a coffee, have a comfort break. Back at 11:05. And then we're going to have some international guests. So we've got Dr. Claudia Regal from the City of New Orleans Mosquito, Termite and Rodent Control Board. I had the pleasure of meeting Claudia myself in person, and yeah, trust me when I say her presentations are very interesting. She's very engaging, and I think you're going to enjoy that speak later on, just after the break. And after Dr. Claudia Regal, we've got Stephen Dupai from Rentokil North America going to be talking termites. Now, again, it's an unusual pest for us, and you might think, well, we don't have termites in this country, Ali. However, it's good to know about different things, but also just because we don't have them now doesn't mean we won't have them at some point. I know there have been instances where they've accidentally been brought in and discovered in areas and possibly terminated. Just don't really know still. But there's always a possibility it happens. So being in the know and being prepared for if we were to ever get issues with termites. And then just before we finish, we'll have Ian Andrew, our CEO, just doing some industry updates, of which, I think there's a few to go through. So thank you again for being with us today. I'm going to stop talking in just a moment, but firstly, if I can ask Richard Faulkner if you'd like to pop yourself up on the screen and say hello. There you are.
Hi, Nat. Morning,
Hi.
everyone. It's actually unusual insects that I'm doing.
The unusual insects.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly, to fool you even more. And this is your fault as well, because apparently when I got the phone call from Lauren, she said Nat said that you're doing talk. So
I tend to find that's a normal comment whenever someone speaks to anyone. They say this is Natalie's fault, but they go.
It's like there's alcohol involved here, so that's your.
The blame me. Okay, well, listen, tell us about unusual insects then, Richard. Thank you so much.
I'm just going to share my screen, everybody.
I'll let you know when it pops up. Here we go. There we go. We can see presenter. I'll let you know when it's working.
I was taking a look at it, technical difficulties now. Right, so my talk today, everybody, is on unusual insects. So when I got the call from Lauren, I was like, well, what's unusual? What does it actually mean? So I'm going to look at what's unusual to the public. I'm going to talk about some of the unusual store product insects that I've come across in my sort of 26 years of doing this. I'm going to look at a couple of unusual timber pests. I'm going to talk about hazardous moths because they're becoming more sort of prominent in the UK now. And then I'm going to look at a couple of invasive species that we get. One that was technically historical, one that's definitely here, present and established, and then one that's been in the news a lot lately that we all know about. So what's unusual? And this got me thinking, because if you're a pest control technician in a rural area, a cockroach could be unusual to you. We see different things. So if you don't do bakeries or any big food manufacturing, stored product insects are going to be confusing to you. So it's what's unusual. So what our sorry, I hit the wrong thing. So what our definition says is literally not habitually or commonly found or done. So it's insects that we rarely come across in our day-to-day contact or have contact with in our day-to-day or regular pest control work. So I started to think about this a little bit more and thought about what I hadn't come across much, or something that I dealt with very rarely. So from my pest control career, from the very sort of start, I was doing a lot of high-end food manufacturing, pharmaceuticals, bakeries, and lots of sort of small rural stuff as well. And then dealing with infectious control in hospitals and stuff like that. So I've had quite a very, very broad spectrum pest control career. So I've pretty much seen lots of things. So I then thought, what else is unusual? What does unusual look like? So it got me the chance to throw in my favourite insect, which is this insect here, because at heart, I'm still a 6-year-old schoolboy. So this is the cockchafer, still makes me giggle. And it's got the best scientific name of all. It's called Melalontha melalontha. But to me, when I look at it, if I asked a child to draw me an insect, I pretty much imagine this is what a child would draw. And it's very unusual looking. It's very unusual for a standard insect, isn't it? So it's got these lovely sort of bullwinkle moose antennae. It's got these massive, big, what look like puppy dog eyes. They're compound eyes, but they look puppy dog. It's got lovely sort of furry, almost like 70s chest hair going on. It's then this lovely big barrel shape. It's got the shark's teeth markings down the side, and then it's got this big spike out the back. So if this flew into a premises, or for somebody who doesn't know what this is and they see it for the first time, it's very unusual, isn't it? It's out of the normal. So this then got me thinking. So the unusual stored product insects have come across. So I don't know how many of you out there who've done your certified field biologist, but when you're doing that, you learn a load of insects. And some of them, I was like, I've been doing this at the time for, that was what, 10. So I've been doing this for about 15, 16 years at the time. And I've done biology, I've done entomology, and I was then doing my industry qualifications. And I was like, I've never seen half these. There's certain ones that I've just never seen. I remember speaking to Dave Cross, who was one of my trainers and an absolute legend. I was like, Dave, why am I learning about this? I've never seen this. So went and sat my exam, did my IDs, everything went fantastically, brilliant. And then literally, I'd say about a couple of weeks later, I got a call out from one of the techs up in the north. Rich, we'd just taken on the site. The previous company said they were treating biscuit beetle. It's not biscuit beetle. Can you come up and have a look at it? So I pootled up, and yeah, here we were. It was Carpophilus diamonzus, which is our brain's gone, corn sap beetle. So our corn sap beetle isn't a common stored product insect that we really deal with. So they generally feed on overripe fruit and plant sap. They will infest any fermenting plant-based product, and they go into the sort of puree and stuff like that. And you can read all that off the slide. So we were in what was basically a fast food restaurant. They were in the back in one room area. And strangely enough, this is where they stored the syrup for the fizzy drinks that you get off tap. So obviously there'd been a leak there. This had gone under some sort of wooden lats. It was almost like a plant room it was done. And lo and behold, they were under there. So it was quite simple when we found the source, which was obviously the syrup spillage. We got that cleaned up, and then we just went in with a broad range individual residual insecticide. So that was the first time I came across these. And the striking thing for any of the Carpophilus, there's also the dried fruit beetle, which is its closely related cousin, slightly different markings, more black in it. But these guys, when you look at their body, so we're used to head, abdomen, thorax, it actually looks like they're full segmented. And that's sort of the standard for them. Then years later, so I'm talking probably about 8 years later, was the second time I came across these. And it was totally mad because one of the biologists in another region who I'd done their biologist training for said, Rich, I think I've got corn sap beetle, but it doesn't make sense where they are because they're in a powder plant, like a nutrition plant. So I was like, can you send me? So we took a magnified picture, sent it to me, and I was like, yeah, it's corn sap beetle. It's like, look, will you come and have a look because it doesn't make sense. So we went down, and this site has been fantastic because it's got biscuit beetle, it has warehouse beetles, the Trochoderma, and it also had rust red flower beetle. So we now have these guys on site, and it doesn't make sense because it's a powder producing plant. So these were coming out near one of the clean room areas. So, but they were coming into little gaps in the skirting. So we then got them to lift part of the floor and investigate, and they had like a low drain, but it wasn't concreted around, it was just soil. These guys pupate in the soil, so that's where the site was. So they had to come in and do some structural work, cement it and stuff. We've done residual spot treatments and put down the tree. But it was like, how were they there? So did some research on the area, and where this plant is, it is quite a rural area, but it had been the biggest maize growing area historically. It wasn't now, but historically it had been. But a lot of this agricultural area had been changed and been made into big pharmaceutical and manufacturing plants. So this is why these guys were there. But it was just a very, very old one. So my second strange one, and again, this was from this same site that we've just gone to. This is the site that keeps on giving. So this little guy is called Risa vespulae. So it's actually a member of the domestids, but it's the only member or the only one of the genus Risa.
Richard,
Yes,
sorry, is there any chance you better like move a little bit closer to your microphone?
Oh,
and
sorry.
I think moving back and forth, the sound's going in and out a little bit. People are saying they're struggling to hear you a little bit.
So sorry, I'm getting animated. You know,
No, you're right. I know exactly how you feel. I do exactly the same. Thank you, Richard.
Yeah, I'll try and hunch over a bit. So these guys are called Risa vespulae. So they're a member of the domestid family. They're the only one of the genus Risa. So they're 2 to 4 mil, the adults. The larvae get up to about 6 millimeters. They will infest wasp nests and beehives. Hence the second bit, the species name vespulae. And they've become a stored product pest. They're very, very sort of uncommon, or they were very uncommon at the time, but they're starting to become more common. So far as well, interestingly, only females have been recorded, which is why they are believed to be parthenogenic. So, which means that the female just lays an egg that's unfertilized and it develops itself. So they have no male. So this was another very interesting one. And the only way we can think that these got in was that at one point there was a wasp nest on the outside of the building that was treated. And it was like then was something left when there was works or something open and these got in. So the last one here is the Angua-Mars grain moth. So this was another one that I had to learn about for when I did my accredited biologist. But I'd never come across it. And when you look at it, because it's got this lovely fringed forewing, it looks a little bit like a tinnerly. So it looks a little bit like one of our textile moths, which is quite interesting because they are basically quite closely related. So these guys a primary stored product pest, which is quite unique for a moth, because you think of Indian meal moth and our warehouse moths, so our Plodia moths and our Festia moths, they are all secondary pests. So secondary stored product insect needs the grain to be damaged or processed, but a primary can actually damage the grain itself. So this is what these guys do. But again, learned about them, never came across them, and then there'd been an old mill on the docks that had been closed down. Literally, they just went in one day, shut it up, and that was it. It was gone. And it had been left for about 8 years. And then developers had been called in, and they were going to turn it into a very posh dockside apartment. And the company that was working for, we were called in to literally eradicate everything that had been living in there. And the specialist hygiene team were going in to do the clean removal of the grain. Like, it was a massive, massive job. I got roped in to go and do the initial technical survey. So obviously with our usual mice and rats, loads of different store product beetles, but things that you'd expect. And then I came across these guys. So I was very, very excited, as I always am when I come across a new insect, and got loads of samples. And that we had another couple of issues that we found in a store, an old methyl bromide barrel. So everything had to be stopped, and that had to be properly disposed of and overwrapped and taken away, which put things back a little bit. So the main thing, again, with this, because it's a store product insect, was to get the cleaning done. If you get the cleaning done with store product insects, you're basically going to be taking away 75% of them, because your egg, your larvae, and your pupae are going to be around that food bulk. The adults are then really just there for breeding, aren't they? And that's the part that we can knock down and we can treat. So if we're going to do any store product work successfully, we need to remove that food source, because that's the eggs, the larvae, and the pupae gone. And then we need to treat for the adults. So specialist hygiene, great job of the cleaning. We came in, did residual spraying in areas, and actually space treatment, so fogging. So these guys, again, generally found in agri, so grain storage and stuff like that. And they like really high relative humidity of about 75%, which is quite interesting. So unusual timber pests, because again, the company that I work for had a separate timber division in the UK, but in Ireland, where I did a lot of my work at the time, we did some timber work. So we would have just done general sort of treatment for what we call woodworm, so common furniture beetle, and sort of any other sort of timber stuff that was done there. We would do minor treatments. So again, these guys are really, really interesting. They also come up on your accredited field biologist qualification. So this is Narcades melanura. This is the wharf borer. So they're actually quite widespread, but they're not something we commonly come across as pest controllers. So they're found in areas near water, hence the name wharf, warehouse and waterfront borer. These guys lay their eggs in and around rotting timber or water damaged timber. The larvae, when they hatch out the eggs, will then feed on that timber, damaging it, and then they pupate. So the adults are quite strikingly sort of this reddy deep brown colour with this lovely little black tips to the back end of their elytra, to their wing cases. So again, with these, it's a simple one of dehumidification to dry out if it's only gently water damaged, or get the water damaged timber replaced, and just residual insecticidal treatment for knockdown. But this is just something a little bit different that we can come across, especially if we are in an area, could be a city, a big city where you've got rivers running through it, and you've got basement areas and stuff like that that are prone to damp or are old. So you definitely get these guys in London, you get them in like Portsmouth, Plymouth, Southampton, York, places like that, definitely. And definitely in like areas of Dublin, Cork, and stuff like that. So there's something that you can come across. Then this guy, Sixtodian. So this is our death watch beetle. So again, this is a native wood-boring species that we get. It's a stobium. It's closely related to Anobium punctatum, so it's quite closely related to our woodworm beetle. So adults are up to 7 mm length. The larvae again feed on damp and old timber. So historically as well, when we just went out and cut timber before we treated it, we used to just put it up like that, and it used to dry out naturally, and these guys would get into it and again break it down. They have these enzymes in their guts that help break down the cellulose in the wood, and they can feed on quite low nutritional wood, so it can take quite a long time for their life cycle. So up to 10 years to go from that egg to pupation state before they then emerge as adults. So the adults are about a centimetre in length. They're brown with the black tip of the head. The adult knocks on timber to attract a mate. And this is where the whole death watch beetle comes from. The whole name originates from this knocking on the timber. Because when you were sitting waiting and somebody was on their last legs, you sort of sit in silence with them, and all that would be hearing is the hearing knock. And this is where it gets its name from. So again, these would be treated pretty much like our common furniture beetle. So you can use a solution with it that's all either water-based or oil-based. If they were in lengths of timber, then like they do for when you're exporting it or importing it, then you can fumigate it at source or you can heat treat it at source. So hazardous moth, and this is originally what I think Nat wanted me to talk about. Just one evening we were talking about these guys, and there's a couple of species that are prevalent, that the main ones. So this little guy, which is called the brown-tailed moth. So brown-tailed moth look quite innocuous, don't they? Just the little white moth there with brown tail. But the problem is the larvae. So the larvae are these hairy black, red, and white marked caterpillars, and they're really, really hairy. And what happens is when they feel threatened or they're disturbed, then they release these hairs. They release these setae. The bottom, they're barbed. They get stuck in your skin, and they can get breathed in, and they cause severe respiratory and allergic reactions. And I've seen people who have been exposed to them, and it almost looks like they've had sort of boiling fat, something thrown in their face. And it was really, really quite horrible to see. So these guys are active from July to August. So they lay their eggs in batches of 150 to 250. They have a penchant for laying their eggs on the nightshade family. So it's things like hawthorn, plum, cherry, blackberry, rose. This sort of family of plants is what they like to lay their eggs on and feed on. So the young caterpillars as well will spin this, as you can see in the picture, this lovely big sort of nest, silk nest they over-interwin. And this is sort of a protective thing, but it's all about these urticating, these hairs that cause severe rashes and stuff like that. The problem with these, because they are found solely in plants, they're not a public health pest. So occasionally you might get calls for brown-tailed moth. So in order to treat brown-tailed moth, you need to have your plant protection spraying certificates done. So you'll need to have like P1 to P6 in order to do that. So these are an agricultural pest. So when you're looking for a spray to use against them, you need to go the agricultural plant protection route. None of the sprays that you can get for your public health pest control have these guys on them. And then secondary from this, and this one is pretty much an invasive. This is the oak processionary moth, and it's quite a beautiful moth. To be honest, it looks quite pretty. I love the mottling pattern on its wings. So these guys were first actually recorded in London, 2005. and they've now been found in London and the surrounding areas, and they're starting to be found in the home counties, and they're starting to spread like everything else. So the species is only associated with oak. So here it's Quercus robur and Quercus petriae, so the peduncle oak and the common oak. The larvae and the caterpillars again, it's the setae, it's the hair on them that causes the problems. So the young caterpillars, again, on a tree limb or actually on the trunk of the tree, they will spin this silk nest, and they spend most of the daytime in the silk nest. It's sort of their little protected happy space there, their sort of tent of protection. And then what happens is they then leave the nest of an evening to feed, and they do it in a procession. So they literally follow each other nose to tail, which is how they got the name processionary oak moth. So again, because their hairs are urticating, and again causes severe rashes and breathing problems, breathing difficulties. So these guys, when they're come across, so if you're called out and you go to look at it, you need to report this to the Forestry Commission. It needs to be reported to DEFRA. So you can do it via the website, there's an app, or you can directly phone it in. And then this sort of led me to thinking about invasive species, because these are definitely unusual for us. So I did one that was historic, and then that kicked me in the nose, because literally when I was writing this, it got found for the first time since 1977. And then I was doing one that we know about, that's been well established for a few years, and then one that we're hearing about a lot that's a threat. So the one that we're hearing about a lot at the moment is our Asian hornet. So this guy has been prevalent now for a few years. It's been talked about last 5 or 6 years. And the worry is that they're going to properly colonise and rip through the UK like they've done with France and Spain and Portugal and everything like that. So we've had a number of sightings that have been reported and confirmed in the UK since 2016. So these hornets, compared to our hornet, when you look at them, the way to tell them apart is that the fourth segment on the abdomen is yellow, which you can clearly see. It's also got that lovely little triangle on it, upside down triangle. And the legs of them, when you look at the legs, they're dark, but then they're bright yellow at the bottom part going down to the tarsus. So these guys are also known as the yellow-legged hornet. So they're a major threat to honeybees and other pollinators because they predate on them. They literally wait near the nest entrance and hammer them when they're outside as well. So one of their main things is that they will feed on social insects that pollinate. So they, like honeybee hives are fantastic for them. So they're active through April to November, but during the end of June to August is when they're most active, and then they're inactive over winter. Interesting thing about Asian hornets as well is they have a secondary satellite nest. So sometimes when they've been up first, they located the nest, they destroyed it, but there's a secondary satellite nest. So that's important to think of. And again, these guys, when they're suspected, we've got suspected sighting, we've got sample, you need to get this reported to DEFRA as quickly as possible. Again, app, online, or by sending them an email. But these have been sort of very prevalent, and the fact that our weather is getting warmer, and this is like what Natalie said about the termites. There's no reason why in a few years, with the way that global warming is happening, that we're starting to see invasive insects that can actually, once we've got that temperature slightly up, that can adapt. And occasionally we will get termites. They're usually sort of softwood termites brought in from the likes of sort of Spain and Portugal and furniture and stuff like that. So it's an occasional thing that you can see as well. But this whole invasive insects is going to be more of a thing. We've got very open trade routes everywhere. We've got goods coming back and forth. We've got an increasingly warm climate. So these things will eventually start to establish. So the other one that I thought I'd talk about, because this has become very prevalent during my career, and this was one of the things that we're like, oh, look out for these, like when I'm looking out for the Asian hornet, was the harlequin ladybird. So these originated in Asia, and they were then reported and confirmed in the UK. There's loads of different sort of theories on why or how that these came in, and one of them would have been that people who do gardening and stuff, when you've got aphid control, you can get sort of biological control for your aphids. So you ordered little packets of ladybirds, but again, these were actually not native ladybirds, these were harlequin ladybirds. So the harlequin ladybirds, as I said, they've been in the UK since 2004. There's lots of different diverse markings of them. They can have up to 21 black spots, or as you can see in the bottom sort of picture, the bottom sort of 5 around there, you've got the black morphology, which then has the red or orange spots on it itself. They generally have this distinctive white triangle on their forehead as well, which is quite good because our larger native species don't have this. So the harlequin's generally larger and more aggressive than our native ladybird species, so they can outcompete them for eating aphids, but they will also eat the eggs and the larvae of our native species, which again impacts them quite heavily. So again, March to November, you have multiple broods, and they have multiple broods as well, so they can have broods in spring, summer, and autumn, which then gives them a competitive edge. And these guys up to almost the centimetre, so 8 millimetre in length. Again, sometimes we'll get these in buildings. Back in December last year, we had our Christmas meeting in Cambridge, and we're staying out in quite a nice old building in the middle of nowhere. And I had harlequin ladybirds in my bedroom, which I got very excited about, and everybody that I worked with thought I was a nutter. But yeah, so again, it's just sort of residual treatment. If they're inside the building, externally, it's going to be stuff like cutting back your vegetation away from the building to stop them cutting in, and reducing your own aphids to doing plant protection stuff. Okay. And then finally, is this guy. So this is the Colorado beetle. And I was like, so I'm going to do a historically old one. So it was like brilliant, because these sort of were first found actually the year I was born. So I thought that was quite nice as well. Also the year that punk broke, and they were a bit punky in their colours. But they were literally massive outbreaks that were reported. They do massive damage to potato crop. So they defoliate potato plants, and they affect it a lot. So there were 2 outbreaks in the last 70 years at the time of writing, which is 1976, and the second in 1977. So it was first established in Europe in 1921. They were found in Bordeaux in France, but it's found in most European countries. It's yet to have been established properly in the UK. So they will also feed on other plants in the nightshade family as well. They're an agricultural pest, and they actually pose no threat to us at all. So again, this is a plant protection. This is a farm thing, really. But as I was writing this, going on this historic one, larvae were found for the first time since 1977 in a potato field on the 11th of July in Kent. So DEFRA went out, AFA went out too, and they confirmed that this was the case. So they're now inspecting all the areas, seeing how widespread this is, and how they're going to contain it, or if it's just a sort of one-off small level occurrence. So that's the thing with these. We've got lots of different unusual insects. We've got insects that are unusual for pest control because we don't come across them very often. We've got insects that are unusual because occasionally we get insects that come in that affect us that aren't public health insects. And you've got to think, we've got what? Worldwide, estimated around 10 million species of insects. So the chance of us coming across something that we don't see every day is quite possible. So that, folks, is pretty much me. So thank you for your time and stuff.
Great.
Any
Thanks,
questions?
Richard. That was amazing. Thank you. There was a few people I think with the sound issues, but yeah, by you leaning forward, we could definitely hear you a lot better. So yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, like you said there, it's yeah, there's a lot of insects in the world, and when we're out and about and we get whether it's someone calling us about something that's unusual, or we happen to come across it on one of our contract sites. What do you how should pest controllers best approach that? From a professional point of view, the customer out, because none of us like seeing an insect and going, oh, I don't know what that is. I don't know. Are there any tools we can use or any places we can go to
Yeah.
help?
Well, sometimes that's the thing, isn't it? We don't know. You sometimes have an idea, and it depends. In a big established company, like the one that I worked in that I don't mention, we had a technical department of which I was. A couple of us, being like I studied environmental biology, but I specialised in entomology and behaviour. So I'm reasonably good with entomology. If I if there was something I wasn't sure of, then I had a couple of people I could just say, "What do you think this is?" Never tell someone what you think it is, because believe me, they come back, "Yeah, it's that," and a lot of
Hmm.
the time it might ain't. They can be sent into you guys. We've also got the likes of companies like Killjoy. We've got a technical department. You can send them IDs as well. I think other guys that you can do that too. Royal Entomological Society are fantastic. Um, Great people to chat to. Every now and then I'll ping them something. And
Hmm.
that's the thing. Or put it about. There's lots of different, now through social media, there's lots of different sites. You can get to, you've got Wadey out there as well. He's fantastic at that. Paul as well, Mr. Westgate. Really, Paul's a fantastic. Like, I'm an insect nerd, but they're next level. You know what I mean? So those guys will love it like me. You get something, you have a play with it to see what it is, and
Yeah,
sometimes, yeah, it can be something really weird.
yeah. It's
And
about
that's
it's
the
about
thing.
who you know a lot of the time, isn't it, as well, and not just
Yeah,
what you know, and utilizing the different contacts that you have, and
yeah. And the thing is as well, you as you go on, like you pick stuff up and you get identifying factors and things and little ways of remembering stuff what it is, and it's that. It's like, as I said, I was lucky. I've pretty much been in every situation, but a lot of sort of places where I'm going to come, like store product insects, as you know, is pretty much my thing now. I look at store product insects because I've been exposed to them for a long time, same as sort of the cockroaches and the bed bugs and the standard stuff we do. But
mm,
it's the strange stuff that gets you, isn't it? It's the one that you're like, oh, what's that? And why is
yeah.
that? And then it's, why the hell is that here? And it's sort of
Hmm.
understanding that and going back to your basic principles.
Mm.
And
It's that core, isn't it, to our job, the investigation of it all and
yeah,
figuring it out.
it is totally. And then you've got things like, there's good guides. Collins do great guides. So you've got the Collins Guide of British
Mm.
insects, British spiders, the straw pod. They're really good. Again, back to the lovely people at the Royal Entomological Society. You can get their dichotomous keys. That's for more insect nerdy people like me, where you're looking at like how many segments on the tarsus and this sort of thing. But
Mhm.
it can help you get it down. Main thing with it is if you can get it down to an order, so you know it's a hymenopteron, I know that's a wasp, or I know that's a beetle. That's part
Mhm.
of the battle. It's then getting it down. If you get it down to genus, like we know with
Yeah.
our sawtooths, like unless I've got a microscope, I'm just like, yeah, it's a sawtooth beetle. I'm probably going to go, it's a sawtooth grain because it's in this, but it could be
Mm.
a merchant, but it doesn't matter because I'm going to treat it exactly the same way.
Yeah.
So part of it's that. But if you're unsure before you do anything, especially now with smaller ants as well,
Hmm.
every now and then our common black garden ant isn't absolutely massive. Sometimes you get almost smaller versions, don't you? But
Hmm.
that could be an Argentine ant, so you can't go and spray it. You
Mm.
need to get a proper ID to know what you're doing. So that's the thing. Just if you're
Yeah.
unsure, ask, reach out.
That's it. It's the solutions side of it, is coming up with that solution. Yeah,
Yeah,
sometimes, like you said, it can be the sawtooth beetle. Generally, it's the same depending on if it's merchant or grain. But
mm,
with ants, yeah, of course, some species you really do need to know the exact species, because the treatment would be very different.
yeah,
Yeah, good stuff. Someone mentioned here, just because of the sound, some of the solutions that you shared for those unusual insects, they couldn't sort of really hear them or catch up with them, and asked whether they could receive a soft copy document or other after. But I think yeah, it's just a presentation today, isn't it? There's not a
yeah.
document that
No,
you guys have, or
it's just sort of standard. So if you're dealing with a store product insect, right, it's a complete life cycle. So the egg,
mm,
larvae, and pupae are always in and around the food or the spillage or whatever
yeah,
it is. So if you remove that, you've done 75% of your job. That is then when you use your chemical to knock down and kill the adult stage, and that will be successful. But if you just go in
mhm,
and use a chemical, you're just knocking down the adult stage, and that's where you get reinvasion.
mm,
It's very
mm,
similar to fly control as well, isn't it? It's getting rid of the source of the infestation. Because if you just knock down the adult, 7 days later, call back, it didn't work, I've got flies. So
yeah.
it's just that.
That's a good point. That's a really good, all-encompassing
Mm,
one bit of advice for everyone, and a bit of information to have in your mind always is, it's an insect. Okay, as long as I find why it's here and what it's feeding on, and address
mm,
that, like you said, 75% of the problem done. It's just they're mopping up maybe the residue
mm,
that's left and the few that are left over.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
good stuff.
it's just standard like that. So most of the time, for the store product ones, it's cleaning and then your residual. For the timber pests, so the wood borer and Narcodes, um, with that, it's generally in damp, waterlogged timber. So that usually will have to be removed and replaced.
Mm,
But dehumidification and then just residual insecticide, it's quite
mm,
um, susceptible to it. So it works quite well. With the Death Watch beetle, you literally treat them like a common furniture beetle. So
yeah.
with that sort of a treatment, which can be the oil or water based, applied to the timber, soaks in, kills them. Um, and that, they're generally going to be in sort of older buildings where they used, like as I said, historically, when they built timber frames back then, they didn't treat the timber; they just cut it.
Yeah.
So you, what we call green timber in, which has got a sort of a lot of flow in it, which then dries out to become xylem. So they would have got in there, but they can live in quite what we call poor nutritional timber because of these
Hmm.
enzymes. But then that's why the life cycle can take literally from egg to pupation up to
Yeah.
10 years. Which like
It's a
you have
massive
to be
amount of time, isn't
you
it?
have to be patient, don't you? Which is
Yeah.
it's not that. So yeah,
Yeah, indeed. Just one other question in here about Asian hornets.
yeah.
So they're asking, are they allowed to treat them and then report them, or must they be left to DEFRA to deal with?
So general rule of thumb is report them to DEFRA first. So when you're reporting to DEFRA, yeah, because once you've if you found a nest, then you can earmark that nest. DEFRA will come out and treat it because they'll be looking for that secondary nest as well,
Mm.
uh,
Mhm.
which is quite a big thing with it. But yeah, these have to be reported to DEFRA.
Yeah.
Um, and at the moment, we're pretty sort of limited. Like this has been going on what, for about 6, 7 years now, really, the threat of the Asian hornet. Because I know
Yeah.
like the Channel Islands were getting it, weren't they? And we'd get occasionally one be found. But now we're starting to get nests. And I know at one point there were definitely more Asian hornet nests found this year than there were wasp nests. Like, well, at last we're seeing some wasps. But
Yeah.
again, it's a climate thing, isn't it? So wasps
Mm.
are quite unusual this year because we've had so much rain. Because it's literally we've been underwater since October, so not much foraging's going on. So you've got a lot of very small nests,
Mm.
which a small nest doesn't really bother you, does it? And then the
No.
fruit's only just sort of ripening, dropping now, where it would have been doing that sort of what mid to end of June into July. So we're a full
Mhm.
month and a half on with it behind with our cycles. So
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
it's
it.
really
It's
interesting, isn't it?
we're certainly seeing the seasons change slightly, aren't they, and affecting insects
Mm,
in that way. It's just about us
yeah,
adapting. But yeah, lots of chatter about the wasps, hasn't there been?
yeah.
um, Great. Okay. Well, listen, that's perfect timing. Yeah, with sort of 30 seconds to go, Richard. Thank you, yeah, so much for that.
No,
A real good insight to all the different things we come across. And yeah, big key takeaway from it is, yeah, identify the species and use your contacts to do that. You can get in touch with us and obviously you. If I
yeah,
don't know, I'll hopefully know someone that does. And yeah, just
yeah,
we'll keep talking and yeah, help each other out, I think.
mm, yeah,
Great.
definitely.
Thank you, Richard, so much.
Thanks,
And
Matt.
I'm sure I'll see you again soon.
You will do. I was going
Great.
to
Thank
say,
you.
where are we? It's going to be September, isn't it? Somewhere, I think.
Yeah,
Next week.
we're not be in Northern Ireland. Yeah, going to be in
Oh,
Northern
yes.
Ireland.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. It will
Yeah.
be. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I will see you there. Take care
Great.
now.
Thanks, Richard.
Bye, folks. Take care.